Hi everyone! So in just a few short days, the entire team is going to be flying to New York City to participate in BookExpo and BookCon. We went last year, absolutely fell in love with the city, and we're excited to be going back, so we thought we would share some of our favorite books that are set in New York.
Yeah, yes.
So the first book I'm going to talk about is Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close by Jonathan Safran Foer. This is, on every single list of books that should be, books set in New York City. These are the books you should read. And on lists just of books you should read in general, I think.
Yeah.
It's very, very well known. It's very sad. It's about a boy named Oscar who is kind of trying to solve a mystery of this key that he finds that belonged to his father who passed away in 9/11. So it's a little bit of a mystery, but it's just such a well done book, and he kind of goes around New York City, and I read this probably over a decade ago now, and I still think about how awesome this book is. It's just so well put together, and it's one that I think everybody needs to read. Well, I will add it to my list.
Yeah, same here. I did not know that was the premise of the book. I knew it took place after 9/11, but I didn't realize it had such a mysterious story to it.
Same.
It's cool.
Yeah, and this kid kind of trying to come to terms with what happened to his father.
Yeah. How old is the
I think he's only about 7.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's quite young.
Huh.
He could be a little bit older than that. I could be like, but yeah, he's young. He's a young boy.
Huh.
Yeah.
Right.
Sad, but very good.
Good. Sad is okay sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. I'm gonna lighten things up a little with
Please
my
do.
first pick. I went with all kids books here, and my first one is actually a picture book, not a middle grade book.
Fun.
My first pick is The Curious Garden by Peter Brown. I found this one while I was working at Kids Books and just fell in love with it. It's about a little boy growing up in an urban city. Surprise, it's New York.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of like a dark, dirty city, or at least his neighborhood is, and then he stumbles across like an abandoned railway line, and slowly he turns that into his garden. And then the whole community gets involved, and it just flourishes, and it's so beautiful. If you don't know Peter Brown, his illustrations are like out of this world great. They're just so charming. But it was actually, the book is inspired by the High Line.
Yeah, I was gonna say it sounds like the High Line.
Yeah. So I hope we get a chance to go walk the High Line while we're there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just it's so neat to see this beautiful garden cut straight through the middle of this gigantic metropolis.
So my first choice is The Geography of You and Me by Jennifer E. Smith, who Corey actually got me hooked on. I think she's my new Casey West, maybe? So this story starts with Lucy and Owen stranded in an elevator in their New York City apartment building. There's a blackout across the city, and they're just kind of stuck together, and it's kind of like their first meet cute. So during the blackout, they end up spending like the next few days together wandering the deserted streets of New York at night or on the roof of their apartment building. But eventually Lucy's jet-setter type parents decide that they're just going to move the whole family abroad, and they're just going to leave. And they end up in Scotland. And then Owen and his dad end up hitting the road so his dad could look for a new job, and they end up going on like a bit of a road trip of the States, and he's always sending postcards to Lucy, which is really cool. But their time in New York and their memories together in New York is kind of the heart and soul of the book, and this was definitely a 24-hour read for me, and I just loved it, and it's definitely a nice little nod to New York City.
Yep. Nice. That sounds very cute.
It
Very
is,
cute.
and I wept like a baby.
So next up, I feel this list wouldn't be complete, especially for us here at OwlCrate, if we didn't mention an Adam Silvera book.
It's true.
I'm specifically going to talk about They Both Die at the End because in this one, our main characters, Rufus and Mateo, end up spending a lot of time wandering around New York City.
Yeah.
So if you don't know the premise of this one, in this version of New York, there is a company called Deathcast, and they will call you when it's your last day to live. So you know you're going to die, you don't know how, but there's no getting out of it, you will die when you get that call. And so at the beginning of the book, Rufus and Mateo, who don't know each other, both get the call, and they both log into this app, which is called the Last Friends app, where you can meet other people who are also going to die that day, and like connect, and like make a last day memory, basically.
Yeah.
So these two boys connect and end up, and they're very different kind of people, and they end up kind of spending their day trying to make memories and, say goodbye to people. And
Yeah.
it's very sad. Like, they both die at the end. Like, he's not hiding
Yeah,
it.
they're not just
But they very much like spend their time like wandering around New York City, and it's a beautiful book.
I love that cover.
I know, and like even like there's like the skull in the back.
Oh yeah, it took me forever to see that, but I love
like, the Reaper.
The Reaper in the
yeah,
chest.
so they're really well thought out.
Absolutely.
But it's
on my
it's
TBR.
a tearjerker.
Yeah, Adam,
Adam's books.
what are you doing to us?
I will say I didn't find this one as sad as History Is All You Left Me.
Oh,
Which is
okay.
interesting.
That is interesting.
But very good.
My next pick is one that I'm ashamed to say that I have not read, but I haven't had 50 years to read it, but it's been around for 50 years. And that is From the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler by E.L.Konigsburg. So Corey was just saying that this was one of her absolute favorites as a kid, and I don't know how this one wasn't on my radar when I was a kid, because it is so exactly what I wanted to read.
Right.
But it's about Claudia and her little brother who run away from home and go move into the Met in New York City.
Oh, cool.
And then they get wrapped up in the mystery of this potentially priceless angel statue and the woman who sold the statue to the Met. I might have to track down a copy and bring it with us to New York, because it just seems like the best place possible to read it for the first time.
Yeah. I think for kids, for sure, this book is just like, it is like when you're a kid, you dream of running away from home and making it on your own, especially in like this cool setting like the museum.
Yes.
Yeah, I loved it as a kid, and like seeing it on Sally's Sisters, like, oh my god, I forgot.
I remember the first time I watched The Royal Tenenbaums when Margot Tenenbaum did a similar thing and went and lived, I think, in the New York Public Library for a few years as a kid. I was like, oh my god, dream come true.
I have not been to the Met,
Nor have I.
Maybe this time. We'll see.
So my next pick was The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon, and in that we spend the day with Natasha, who it might possibly be her last day in America as her parents are getting deported and she's going to have to go as well. So in between meetings with lawyers, she literally bumps into Daniel, and they cross paths a couple times, and they eventually kind of give in and end up spending the entire day together, just wandering around New York and seeing some really cool places, going to karaoke. And I just wish that it was physically mapped out, because I think it would be a great tour of New York to like follow it around and go find all these cool places.
Could you map it yourself?
Maybe by neighborhood.
Yeah.
Like I know there's a record store she goes to, and the karaoke place. Project. Stay tuned, folks.
Yeah.
And again, like another 24-hour read for me. I just couldn't put it down. I ended up listening to the audiobook like a month later. So if you want to, embrace your inner Natasha, stick on some bright pink headphones and give it a listen.
And that one's really fun too, because like it's a really good, like fun contemporary, but it also has like the more serious undertones of like illegal immigration and deportation. And it doesn't, everything's not all happiness and flowers at the end.
Right.
It's like, it's realistic.
Yeah,
and
totally.
It's very, like it like acknowledges the fact that they really did only spend one day together.
Yeah.
And that's not going to change your entire life most of the time. So it's a great book. Definitely recommend it.
And I love the multiple perspective thing. I find I really enjoy that with books. Like you have the lady who does the metal detector at the lawyer's office and like all these little bit parts, but it's mostly like some of it's from Natasha's point of view and some of it's from Daniel's point of view, and it's really sweet. Yeah. Hits home again. More tears for Crystal.
Beautiful cover.
Yes. I wish it was here. But I left my copy at home, and Sally is borrowing Karina's copy because she should definitely read it.
Borrowing it for the last year. It's still on my shelf.
Holding it hostage.
Yes, exactly.
She's keeping it safe.
But they are making a movie of it.
Yes, that's the other
you're
reason
gonna
I
have
meant
to
to bring it up today.
Yeah.
I was like,
Okay.
great, it's going to be a movie.
They are making it into a movie.
And if there's anything I love, it's movies set in New York City. Best city. New York and Chicago, just every movie should be shot now.
So the last book I'm going to talk about is another quite serious read, and that is Night Film by Marisha Pessl. Now this is an adult mystery thriller that has a lot of like mixed media, email files and stuff in it, and it's just my favorite mystery I've ever read.
High praise.
Yeah. So at the very beginning of this book, the body of Ashley Cordova, who is the daughter of like a reclusive and kind of notorious Hollywood director, is found at the bottom of a building in Manhattan, and her death has been deemed a suicide, but there is a investigative journalist in here named Scott McGrath, and he thinks it's a little bit too suspicious, and goes in search of to solve the mystery. It's very strange. Like, it's sad because Stanislav Cordova, who is the kind of weird director, is such a strange man, like digging into his life. Like, it almost is like kind of magical and psychedelic in a way. I just flew through this. I think I want to reread it now that I'm talking about it. And it's like it definitely is an adult novel. Like, it's not a kid's book by any means. But it's set in New York City, largely set in New York City, and I just love it. If you like mysteries, especially adult mysteries, I think this is one where like I just didn't see any of it coming.
Oh wow,
okay.
That is good. As like a detective fan, a movie fan, and a New York fan, I think that's gonna have to move up my TBR a little.
I definitely think you would for
like,
sure.
Was this written for me?
It might have been. But yeah, it's this one often gets high praise on BookTube, and I understand why. Nice. And this cover is quite cool.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
It's also like the heaviest book
I know,
I've ever
it's really
up.
heavy.
Surprisingly hefty.
Every time I pick it up, I'm like, oh yeah. You get a little bit of a workout reading this one. But yeah, good book.
Nice.
So I had a very hard time narrowing it down to just 3, so I'm going to run through a quick few honorable mention ones here. Harriet the Spy. Oh my goodness, do I relate to her? As just a snoop through and through. Should mind my own business sometimes, but I'd rather take notes. York, which we included last June in our box, just like the coolest alternate version of New York.
Still no sign of the sequel, though.
Still no sign of the sequel. Come on, Laura Ruby. And The Vanderbeekers of 141st Street by Karina Yan Glazer, which came out last year and was on all kinds of lists as like one of the best children's books of 2017. So it's about five kids who have to sort of try and convince their grumpy landlord not to evict them from their Brooklyn brownstone. But the one that I'm actually going to choose is Stuart Little by E.B. White. Absolute classic. I loved it so much as a kid, and it still is just like sort of like the clearest vision I have of like storybook New York, kind of. For anybody who hasn't read Stuart Little and like, what are you waiting for? It's so delightful. It's the story of a little mouse who is born into a human family, and they're all just kind of like, oh, well, that's strange, and then go about their lives.
That's fine.
It's just this like wonderful little adventure story about Stuart navigating the human world and navigating the city and going on all kinds of adventures. But I just remember going to Central Park last year when we all went for the first time, and seeing the pond that he goes sailing on all the little like
those the
radio controlled
like,
boats that the kids
thing
drive. He gets to hop on and be the captain of one, and I was like, oh my god, it's exactly like I imagined it. So yeah, that is my third pick for my must-read New York book.
Good choice. So like your third pick for Stuart Little and you seeing that pond in person. After we went to New York last year, about 6 months later, I read Dash and Lily's Book of Dares, and it opens in the Strand bookstore where we were.
Fun.
So to be able to actually like plot out the layout of the store and be like, oh, they're in the YA section. Oh, he went downstairs to this. It was just, it was really cool. Like I could almost picture where the notebook was stashed. I was like, And so this is about Dash and Lily. Dash finds Lily's notebook with just an open dare to the first person who finds her notebook, and they kind of end up taking each other on like a little challenge scavenger hunt around New York City. And they keep like hiding the notebook in different places, and they each have to do different tasks around the city to kind of get through Christmas. And as someone whose dream it is to spend Christmas in New York City, this delivers. It's just, it's beautiful, it's fun. You want to go to FAO Schwartz, you want to go to like all these fun places. Once again, another 24-hour read for Crystal. I burned through the audiobook with this just doing anything around my house that would allow me to keep listening. And then I followed it up right away with Dash and Lily's 12 Days of
Dash and Lily.
12 Days of Dash and Lily, and that was just as good. Well, not as good as the first one, but it was definitely nice to like hang out with these guys for like a good week and just be like, oh, it was just so great. And yeah, I would recommend a Christmas read. I mean, you could read it now, but like nothing will put you in the mood for Christmas more than like a little New York City adventure in the snow.
Yes.
It was really good.
So those are our New York City picks to get us all in the mood for our big trip next week. If you have any that we have not thought of or mentioned in this video, please leave them in the comments below. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up and subscribe for more videos every Wednesday and Saturday. Happy reading, and thanks for being awesome.
Bye.